I never felt like I truly belonged in the house where I grew up. Even as a small child, I sensed the invisible wall between me and the others. My sisters, born to my mother, were treated with warmth, softness, and overflowing affection. I, on the other hand, was the other child. The one who felt more like a guest than a daughter. No one ever said the word stepdaughter out loud, but I heard it in every cold tone, every dismissive glance, every moment I was told to do it yourself, while my sisters were comforted and cared for. Even at that young age, I understood something was different about me. But every night, as I lay in the dark trying to swallow my tears, I whispered to myself, one day, I will belong, if not here, then somewhere I create myself. Loneliness became my early teacher. When my sisters refused to sit with me, when my mother pushed me aside with a tired sigh, I learned to be quiet, to endure, to find comfort where none was offered. I ate alone. I walked to school alone. I grew up alone, but that loneliness carved something powerful inside me. A quiet strength, a resilience that children rarely learn so early. I realized that the world might not offer me love freely, so I would have to grow strong enough to stand without it. School wasn't much easier. Some classmates had heard whispers about my family and found entertainment in repeating them. She's the stepdaughter. Her mom doesn't even treat her like one of them. Those words cut deeper than they could imagine. But I refused to cry in front of them. Instead, I buried myself in books. In stories. In knowledge. Books never judged me. Teachers praised me. And for the first time, I felt a spark inside. A belief that maybe I could be someone, despite everything. I told myself, they will remember who I become, not who I was. As I grew older, the distance in my home only widened. The more my sisters blossomed under our mother's warmth, the more invisible I felt. But instead of breaking me, it pushed me forward. I began to dream of a life beyond those walls, beyond the cold kitchen, beyond the lonely bedroom. I studied harder. I imagined a future where I wasn't unwanted. A future where I would build my own place in the world. And deep inside, a voice whispered, this house cannot contain you forever. When I decided to apply for university, my mother didn't congratulate me. She didn't even look pleased. Don't go far. We still need you here, she said. But there was no love in her tone, only fear of losing control. I didn't argue. I simply tried harder. I worked part-time at night. I studied tirelessly during the day. And when the exam results were announced, I had passed on a full scholarship. My sisters laughed and said, you won't last a year. But I didn't need their belief. I had my own. I promised myself I would return one day, not as the girl who was ignored, but as the woman they could no longer overlook. University life was tough. I struggled financially. I ate the cheapest meals. I studied by dim lights and worked late shifts just to survive. But compared to the emotional coldness of my childhood, these hardships felt strangely familiar, almost manageable. Pain didn't scare me anymore. I had been living with it for years. And with every challenge, my determination grew. I learned that my strength wasn't an accident. It was the result of all the nights I felt unwanted. I graduated with honors. My first job wasn't glamorous, but it was the first time in my life someone looked at me and truly saw my worth. You're disciplined. You're reliable. You're impressive. These were words I had never heard at home. Soon, I was promoted. Then promoted again. People trusted me, respected me, listened to me. For the first time, I felt what it meant to be valued, and it changed everything. I eventually gathered the courage to start my own business. It was small at first, but I threw myself into it with everything I had. I remembered every childhood struggle, every dismissive laugh, every cold stare, and I turned them into fuel. The business grew, clients multiplied, people began to mention my name with admiration. I became known as the woman who rose from nothing. The woman who refused to break. The woman whose strength could be felt before she even entered the room. Years passed before I visited home again. When my mother opened the door, she froze. I was no longer the timid girl she once dismissed. I stood tall, confident, self-made. Her eyes softened with something I had never seen directed at me before. Regret and pride, she whispered. I didn't know you would become this strong. I didn't blame her. In a way, she had shaped my strength more than anyone. My sisters looked at me with disbelief. Gone was the quiet girl they once excluded. Before them stood a respected, accomplished woman. One of them said quietly, we were so unfair to you, but you still became someone incredible. I smiled gently. I don't hold anger toward you. Life teaches all of us differently. My path was harder, but it made me stronger. They lowered their eyes, finally understanding. My name eventually became known in professional circles. I gave speeches, led teams, mentored young women, and opened opportunities for those who felt forgotten, just as I once did. People introduced me as a leader, a visionary, a woman who built herself from nothing. And every time I stood on a stage, I remembered that lonely little girl who once felt like she didn't belong anywhere. I wished I could tell her, "You will create a world where you belong." I finally bought a home of my own, bright, warm, filled with peace. There were no cold voices here. No ignored feelings. No closed spaces. Only freedom and self-respect. I realized I had built the home I had always needed. Not with luck, but with strength. This was my place. My sanctuary. My proof that I had survived, and won. I am no longer the girl who was pushed aside. I am the woman who rose above it. If my childhood had been easy, maybe I wouldn't have become this strong. If I had been welcomed, maybe I wouldn't have learned to stand on my own. If I had been loved effortlessly, maybe I wouldn't have learned how powerful self-love can be. So I hold no bitterness in my heart, only gratitude. To anyone who feels unwanted or out of place, I say this. The world is wide. Pain does not define you. Your strength is waiting to be discovered. And one day, you will build the home, and the life, you deserve.